Ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure to give to you the fourth President of our Fourth Republic, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama.
Thank you very much. Kindly be seated. Let me just proceed on existing protocol. There are too many distinguished people here to be mentioned, so I'll just go straight into my speech. Good morning, ladies. No, it's afternoon. Sorry, I was supposed to speak in the morning. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, captains of industry, chief executives, and managing directors. I want to begin by thanking you for the invitation to join you at this 7th Ghana CEO Summit. This invitation appears to be a natural follow-up to the opportunity you offered me to interact productively with you at your last cocktail at the Accra Marriott Hotel. I'm naturally a positive-minded and open-minded person who is very reflective, especially when it comes to my country, Ghana. For some time now, my reflections have centered on the downturn in our political governance system and the adverse economic and investment environment currently facing our country. As one who has led this country before, my attention is not only on the current appalling situation in which we currently find ourselves, but also on the pragmatic steps that need to be taken to ensure an economic recovery and a sustainable stabilization of our investment environment. I'm glad to be speaking to you today on your chosen theme, economic sovereignty, sustainable corporate governance, digital industrial transformation, new paths for growth and prosperity, a private-public sector CEO dialogue and learning. It's quite a mouthful. These engagements with you align with similar interactions I've had with you at your end-of-year cocktail, and in the past few months in Brussels, Belgium, where I had a tour and a discussion with the EU and European investors, and lately at the Chatham House in London. Later tonight, I leave for Seoul, South Africa, to engage business leaders and speak at the Korea-Africa Business Summit, to continue my quest to attract viable investments and businesses to Ghana and to Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, as you well know, just about a week ago, my party endorsed my candidature to lead the National Democratic Congress to the polls in 2024. Indeed, my meeting here with you today is my first public engagement since I addressed my party and the nation on Monday, 15th May, accepting the nomination. My party and the NDC is the one that midwifed the birth of the Fourth Republic and gave unto us the present 1992 Constitution. We therefore have a strong commitment to the tenets of the Constitution and the democratic principles enshrined therein. It is therefore obligatory in my party to be democratically elected, and running against two opponents, I had to crisscross the length and breadth of this nation, covering about 14,000 kilometers and visiting every single part of our dear nation in order to be elected flag bearer of our party. Notwithstanding the withdrawal of one of my opponents at the very last minute, we managed to clinch a landslide victory. The margin of victory was historic, approximately 99% of the valid votes cast, and is the most votes ever polled by a candidate at any time in my party's electoral history. This for me was humbling in many significant ways, because it indicated in the strongest terms the singular unifying focus and intent of the NDC to win the 2024 elections. On a personal level, it signifies the onerous, almost sacred responsibility and trust reposed in me. And for me, it is a responsibility that I accept in all humility and modesty, recognizing the Herculean task that lies ahead with regards to restoring our economy back to the path of growth and stability. Having been President and Commander-in-Chief of this country before, I can assure you, our captains of business and industry, and the people of Ghana, that I am determined to work with everyone, irrespective of your political affiliation, ethnicity, or nationality, to rebuild the Ghana we want together. Today, per your theme for this auspicious occasion, if I speak about economic sovereignty, I'm not by any means propounding the absence of interdependence and interrelatedness between Ghana and the rest of the global community. Neither am I attempting radical nationalization of our economic prospects. I agree with you that we must explore the critical aspects of economic sovereignty, sustainable corporate governance, and digital industrial transformation if we are to chart the course of a brighter future for our country. Let me emphasize that my view of economic sovereignty encapsulates the desire to relate to the global world, including Africa, on terms that are beneficial to Ghana, on terms that align with our value systems, create viable businesses for Ghanaians, and generates decent and sustainable jobs for our young people. We're committed to meaningfully partnering the private sector, both domestic and foreign, for sustainable growth and unleashing the potential of the private sector to contribute its share to uplifting the Ghanaian economy. I do not see the private sector as merely an avenue to fund our taxes. There's a story of Aesop, a fairy tale by Aesop, of the hen that laid a golden egg each day. The greed of the owner led him to kill the hen in order to extract all the golden eggs that were in its belly at once. At last, he lost the hen and his regular source of income. We face a similar situation in Ghana today. We're in danger of taxing our few businesses to their graves and losing the daily golden egg that they produce for us. The higher tax burden imposed recently and government's agreement with IMF to remove majority of VAT and duty exemptions creates a very challenging environment for businesses that have decided to remain in Ghana despite the poor investment climate that has been created by this administration. Government's agreement with a fund to increase electricity and water tariffs quarterly creates an additional burden. And let's face it, as captains of industry, you know that Ghana has lost her pride of place as the best place to do business in West Africa. The flowers that attracted you to set up your businesses in Ghana are gradually withering away. Many of your colleagues, CEOs, have shut shop and left our shores, and several others have moved their headquarters and staff to neighboring countries. Having family and friends who own businesses, I know about the endless tax audits dating back several years that you continue to face. The call to appear at YOCO, the Economic and Organized Crime Unit, the harassment of our social security payments, multiple fees and charges for clearing imports or exports at our ports, etc. Indeed, there are many of you today who use the free port of Lomé to import your goods and track them all the way into Ghana because of the plethora of fees and charges that we have at our ports. In any case, who can tell me what happened to the famous mantra, and I quote, from taxation to production? There's dwindling production and gargantuan taxation. Anyway, sorry for my digression. Economic sovereignty in this modern era, viewed through the lens of viable, healthy, and beneficial interdependence and interrelatedness, must become the foundation for social growth and progress. And I may add, the quest for economic sovereignty must certainly go beyond the flowery and impactless speech about Ghana beyond aid. Indeed, our return to the IMF, cap in hand, has made our Ghana beyond aid policy the butt of jokes amongst many commentators in the world. It will take a resolute and committed political will to determine our own economic destiny. It will further require the ability to determine our own economic policies, make decisions that prioritize the well-being of our citizens, and create an environment conducive for the advancement of sustainable growth and development for job creation. Ladies and gentlemen, 1 year ago, top government officials, despite the deteriorating state of our economy, continued to maintain that all was well. Doctored fiscal and budget data by the Ministry of Finance and aided by the central bank painted an optimistic picture which was far from the actual reality. Government was in sync in unanimously dismissing and disassociating themselves from ever seeking an intervention from the IMF. Were told bluntly by the government that they were never going to go back to the IMF. And even 2 weeks before the decision was announced, government officials said, we will not go to IMF today or tomorrow or as long as the MPP remains in government. To them, because of the untruths they peddled in the past about going to the IMF, for them going to the IMF was perceived as an admission that they had failed as a government. Truth is, IMF or no IMF, the economic management team led by our dear Vice President has been nothing but a spectacular failure. Many, including you, the business people and myself, sounded the alarm bells and made suggestions on how to ameliorate the situation long even before the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. But government will have none of it. Today the song has changed. Not only do they associate going to the IMF, not only do they associate with the IMF, but they also see the international financial institutions as the only source of hope out of the crisis they not only created, but deepened. The fund has finally approved a $3 billion program for Ghana to support reform to address its current economic and financial crisis. I quote, "This comes quite late in the day, considering the human cost, the degradation of lives of retirees who hold Government of Ghana bonds, the possible erosion of the savings of our middle class, loss of capital to do business, and the deterioration of our local currency. Ladies and gentlemen, we could have averted this catastrophe. Unfortunately, the fact is that a know-all finance minister and a so-called solid economic management team went on a borrowing spree with minimal investment in capital and infrastructure. They burned through in 6 years domestic revenue and debt of almost 800 billion Ghana cedis. At your end-of-year cocktail event at the Marriott Hotel, we all were discussing how we can come together and help, if not solve, reduce the unemployment menace we face while increasing productivity and service delivery. Today, not only is our young workforce trooping out of the country in droves, but it also now includes our experienced and trained human resources in our schools, hospitals, and other skilled and essential service workers. A steady but determined stream of young people and professionals embarking on mass migration out of the shores of our country is a symptom of an insidious malgovernance disease afflicting our nation today. Our nation loses twice over when we lose some of our best human resource material, while at the same time the unemployed at home remain unemployed and unskilled. Democracy is ruled by the majority. But I dare say, consensus building is at the heart of democracy. Building consensus does not subtract from democracy. It does not diminish a leader. It actually unites society in all its diversity behind government policy. And that is why I found this government's intransigence to seek consensus behind its economic policy and important social interventions such as the free SHS very difficult to understand. Several years ago, I suggested to this government that a century-like forum be held to build a consensus and agree a homegrown fiscal consolidation program. This would have brought all segments of Ghanaian society on the same page about the true state of our economy and would have built a consensus on our program going into the IMF. Unfortunately, the obstinacy of this government to hold consultation with anyone has resulted in an IMF agreement negotiated unilaterally by the Minister of Finance and without broader engagement with civil society, business, and the political opposition. I, like many other Ghanaians, including your respected selves, are seeing the terms of the IMF agreement for the first time only after it received board approval a few days ago. You are exactly one of the key stakeholders that must be engaged on behalf of the teeming youth of this country to help control the seeming quixotic and rudderless jaunts of this administration. Ladies and gentlemen, considering the direction in which our nation is headed, the future of our country absolutely depends on the conversations and plans with you, captains of business and industry. And this is the reason why I accepted to have this conversation with you today about the future of our dear country. And that is why I will state once again that your theme for today is so relevant and timely if we are to stop the hemorrhaging of both our financial and human resources. Ladies and gentlemen, the current state of our economy is dire, and this has resulted in an adverse environment for business and industry. Complaints I hear from the business community today are about the lack of access to credit, high inflation, high taxes, high import and export duties and levies, high-handed regulatory environment, depreciating local currency, harassment by the GRA. And I hear the CEO of GRA is here, if you are listening. Deteriorating infrastructure, among others. Your duty is to run your businesses profitably and create opportunities for employment in Ghana. Our duty as political leaders is to create a conducive, predictable environment and a level playing field for your businesses to thrive. Unfortunately, all the indices show that government is not living up to its part of the bargain. As inflation rises, unemployment has worsened to historic proportions. The statistics from the various sectors are neither uplifting nor comforting. For those of you in the agricultural sector, the 2.7% growth rate posted in 2016 has become a paltry 0.7% in 2022. The manufacturing sector grew at 7.9% in 2016 and today is down to 4.5% in 2022. The construction sector, which was leading in growth from 8.4% in 2016, is currently barely doing 4.2% in 2022. These are challenges that require a comprehensive and multifaceted approach to tackle effectively. As a nation, we must work collaboratively. Government, citizens, business leaders, researchers, civil society must obviously and visibly work together to achieve stability, tame inflation, and secure sustainable socio-economic growth for job creation. We must pursue policies and make decisions that prioritize the interests of our citizens. We must promote local industry, reduce dependency on imports, and support domestic production. And this is why, as President, I established the Ghana Export-Import Bank. This is also the reason we founded the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, with a vision to build and grow the fund into a sovereign wealth fund for strategic business partnerships. With a viable sovereign wealth fund, businesses could leverage its sinks for external credit, and maybe, just maybe, the international rating agencies may not have downgraded us beyond the current, beyond recognition. As it is, our banks are overexposed and avenues for foreign capital to fund businesses have also been constricted. We can do better. Let us work together to reverse the status quo. We must restore indigenous Ghanaian investment in the finance and banking sector and create a tiered banking system to finance different segments of the business market. We don't need every bank to be a category A bank with same capitalization. We can have different levels of capitalization that finance different segments of the business sector. As I stated in my acceptance speech in Tamale a week ago, this will give the opportunity for experienced banking hands, thousands of them who were laid off, to secure their careers back once again and move from the menial jobs that they were forced into with the closure of the indigenous banks. As a further assurance, as far as practicable, and note I said as far as practicable, licenses that were unjustly cancelled by this government will be restored. I cannot till this day understand why a 4 billion Ghana cedis problem was made to cost the taxpayers 25 billion cedis. These banks were asked to capitalize to 400 million. And if there were even 10 of them, that's 4 billion cedis. And yet with the closure of the banks, we incurred a debt, a public debt of 25 billion, guaranteeing depositors' accounts. Indeed, for some of these banks, there was no problem, purely politics or personal vendetta. One bank was shut down solely because its principal shareholder was being investigated for corruption in a case involving a state enterprise. If we are to create an environment for businesses to thrive, government must be apolitical in how it deals with businesses. It must create an environment where it allows businesses, no matter their political, ethnic, or other colorations, to thrive. Ladies and gentlemen, let us also recognize sustainable corporate governance as the backbone of a thriving economy to achieve economic sovereignty. As a nation, we must prioritize transparency, accountability, and ethical practices in our corporate and public sectors. We must establish robust frameworks that are measurable and key to the success of the public sector by fostering a culture of responsible management and oversight. We can attract investment, boost investor confidence, and create an environment that supports the growth of businesses, large and small. We need to extend the gains made so far in improving the mechanisms for business closure to include clear functional provisions and structures that protect businesses during unfortunate periods of business stress. Most of this business stress is actually created by government, creating adverse environments for businesses. By this, I'm suggesting that we firm up policies and mechanisms for distressed businesses to protect them from creditors and even the payment of statutory and regulatory fees during such unfortunate periods. This will allow them a real opportunity to resuscitate. The conventional reasoning has always been that businesses thrive when there is certainty in the regulatory and policy environment. It is imperative that the regulatory and supervisory environment is rebooted to emphasize collaboration between the private sector and government. To do this, there must be a transparent and regular avenue for engagement rather than the current route of imposition of burdensome and counterproductive rules, regulations, and practices on businesses. Business leaders must be partners at the table rather than merely being called and told what government decisions have been made. However, businesses must also embrace the change we are proposing and must renew their faith and commitment to this nation by acting responsibly, equitably, and always especially to their employees, other working suppliers, service providers, and government. To this end, I urge businesses to have a long-term focus that embraces sustainable practices. Talking about regulatory fees, the broadcasting and telecommunications sector comes to mind. The government did not have to shut down radio stations in the manner they did when the businesses had actually committed to living up to their obligations. My administration had a far-sighted, business and people-friendly view for that sector. That's further to my instructions as President, the Minister for Communications, Dr. Edward Omanibuama at the time, ensured the installation of the 800-kilometer Eastern Corridor fiber optic backbone that stretches all the way from Accra through Ho to Boko, with a link from Yendi to Tamale, and the deployment of a 4G network, which Ghana is reaping the necessary benefits from today. Pause for a moment and ask what would have happened if we lived through the COVID-19 without a 4G network. How would you have successfully implemented the work-from-home policy? As a former Minister of Communications myself, I feel fulfilled to witness the evolving faces of the reform we led and pioneered in the 1990s, and the tangible investments I made as president in Ghana's digital space. It was during that era that we superintended the convention of the old Post and Telecommunications Corporation, and I'm sure some of you who are very young will not remember there was a PNT in this country before. The conversion of the old PNT into today's competitive and privatized telecom IT space, including the birth of the regulatory agency, the NCA, of which I was one of the pioneer chairmen. We oversaw the landing of the first submarine cables that connected our country and continent and linked us to the rest of the world for high-speed data transfer. Our early efforts in those days have profoundly changed life as we know it today. And indeed, I find it amusing when latter-day champions in the digital space challenge me to name one policy I'm associated with that has created positive change in the lives of our people. Just as 4G network was introduced when I was president, it is my wish that the full rollout of 5G, the 5G revolution, and the full integration of AI as a facilitator for our productivity will happen under my next tenure as president by the grace of God. By investing further in digital infrastructure as we did with the Accra Digital Center, the National Data Center, the Digital Terrestrial Television Network, by promoting digital literacy and by fostering innovation, we can unlock the full potential of our nation and seize opportunities presented by the digital age to enhance productivity and create high-quality jobs for our people. If with 4G internet we have seen a transformation in digital broadcasting, the music, film, tourism, and sports industries, then I say, let us wait and see 5G. I'm certain that our creative artists, the Wiyales, Diana Hamiltons, PSA Estes, Black Sheriffs, the Rex Omars, Amanzibas, Yvonne Nelson, John Dumelos, Kafui Dankus, Shirley Frimpong Maso, Lydia Forsons, Lil Waynes, and others in the entertainment space, and those yet to come cannot wait either for 5G. Technology has become a powerful tool, and we must restructure our nation in education, in business, in healthcare, amongst others, to be ready for this industrial change of man versus bots. Tech companies around the world, Apple and Samsung, whom I'll be visiting while in Korea, are making huge profits out of new technologies. Tech companies in our country may not be in the same category, but the potential for optimal productivity, profits, and employment remains very high. Ladies and gentlemen, the private sector must be allowed to thrive and grow. The private sector must be supported to contribute its share to the economic upliftment agenda of Ghana, and not merely be seen as a tax revenue avenue. To achieve this, it is imperative that businesses must be allowed to assume their separate legal entity status, and not be treated as spoils of war or collateral damage for the unhealthy sins of even dubious political targeting of their owners. It makes sense to prosecute business owners who have breached the law, but by God, we should still allow the businesses that they superintended to thrive. In my period in government, we initiated efforts to consolidate the marginal gains Ghana was making in the private sector-led growth. We, with the support of our development partners, successfully pursued initiatives in the private sector development strategy. We initiated efforts to streamline business registration process, launched the collateral registry to improve access to funding for business, implemented mechanisms to ease business closures when required, and generally improved the business climate. We are determined in the next NDC government to initiate various efforts to improve productivity, especially the value added per worker index, where Ghana seriously lags behind other competing African countries. The current system for tax offsets is laborious and arbitrary. I intend to have further engagements with the private sector about how to simplify the process and eliminate the arbitrariness in its application. It should be possible for the Ghana Revenue Authority to efficiently allow businesses that are entitled to a refund or have surplus input VAT credit to offset against other tax types from different tax handles. The modality for easing the implementation of this intervention is something I want to engage more with the private sector on. Currently, businesses are inundated with various tax handles and experimental efforts in revenue mobilization. Aside the confusing mechanisms of politicking with the benchmark rates, the numerous tax handles imposed recently and the very experimental taxes, I dare suggest the obvious that tax mechanisms must be scientifically considered. Taxation must be anchored in intelligent, broad-based data analytics and not parochially skewed efforts merely at finding more money to waste on frivolous government expenditures. My position is that the timing of the new tax handles is problematic, as it does not take into consideration sufficiently the adverse impact COVID-19 and the long period of macroeconomic stability has had on Ghanaian business. Businesses need time to build up their agility and shock absorption capacity, and hence the new tax handles coming at this time may be counterproductive in the medium to long term. I'm also aware of the competitive nature of attracting both local and foreign investments, and I fail to see how this knee-jerk approach to taxation provides Ghana with a competitive edge to attract more investors. Unfortunately, the content of a badly negotiated IMF deal only assures us of more nervous days for business from high utility costs and constrained demand from reduced purchasing power of your customers. Added to this pain is the perilous eroding of the capital base of our financial intermediation system through dubious business closures and unhealthy political targeting. It really is a worrying scene, witnessing the ease with which a government that cannot create jobs can easily collapse businesses. With the current reality of government being shut out of the international credit market, this government will continue to voraciously borrow on the short end of the market and effectively crowd out the private sector. I think a reasonable balance is required so that the private sector can still have a credit lifeline. Even for multinationals and very prosperous businesses that do not necessarily rely on our local financial systems for credit, the massive downgrades of our credit rating as well as the fragility of our banking system will still have a massive bearing on their ability to attract foreign credit or capital. But ladies and gentlemen, do not lose hope. The next government of Ghana must be one that allows us as a nation to press the reset button and reboot our national circumstances. We must make a pivot, and we must consider, amongst many, the following. On government's part, we must restore stability and inclusive growth to the economy and rejuvenate the almost collapsed banking and financial sectors. We must reduce wasteful government expenditure and cut especially the huge recurrent expenditure contained in the budget. We must prioritize local participation in the banking, financial, telecommunications, mining, oil, gas, agriculture, and manufacturing and construction sectors to generate more jobs for our youth. We must conduct reforms that will ensure that Ghana never suffers such a deadly debt management program that threatens to send elderly people holding government bonds to an early grave, and also wipe out the investments of the Ghanaian middle class. My proposal here will be that we pass legislation as part of the Public Financial Management Act to put a cap on government's debt accumulation. We must actively attract viable and serious private sector investors to partner government to invest in the productive sectors of the economy for more jobs to be created. This will involve an emphasis on agriculture and agribusiness, and will have a strong focus on making Ghanaians own their own micro-enterprises. We must invest in infrastructure to create a stimulus and conducive environment for economic growth. We must overhaul the management of state-owned enterprises and make continued stay in office based on merit and performance. We must create a system that allows effective dialogue and consensus between the political leadership and business on government's economic program and the climate under which businesses operate. We must reform the justice system and prevent political interference to boost confidence of the investor community in our judiciary. We must deal firmly with the issue of corruption and allow the anti-corruption agencies to work unhindered. We must channel new investments into the agricultural value chain, farmer service centers, agro-processing and agribusiness, with a view to adding value to our products and reducing dependence on imports. We must prioritize domestic production of rice, poultry, fish, tomato, vegetable oils, and sugar. 6 commodities which account for almost $3 billion in imports every year. We must invest in alternative cash crops for which Ghana has a comparative advantage: oil palm, rubber, coffee, avocados, cashew, horticultural products. As much as possible, these products must be processed locally before export. We must work with domestic and foreign investors in our extractive industries to ensure that Ghana increases its benefit from the mutual exploitation of our natural resources. This will include mitigating the adverse effects of mining like land degradation. We must look at issues of land reclamation, afforestation, and taking advantage of the existing carbon exchange regimes. In conclusion, my dear CEOs, ladies and gentlemen, the challenge with our economic recovery efforts in recent years should perhaps lead to a deep introspection and a reconsideration of our national development strategy. It is unthinkable how this government that has brought Ghana's economy on its knees in a manner they have done, considering what was handed over to them. In 2016, it was predicted that Ghana's economy was still to grow at a whopping 8% in 2017. Surely the economy did grow at over 8% as was predicted due to the hard work and sacrifice we put in. We must give true meaning to allowing the private sector to play its role if we are to achieve a sovereign economy for sustainable jobs and growth. To pave the path for growth and prosperity in Ghana, we must explore new avenues and strategies. We must diversify our economy, reduce reliance on traditional sectors, and pursue emerging industries such as renewable energy, new technologies, and agribusiness. By harnessing our natural resource sustainability and investing in research and development, we can foster innovation and create an economy that is resilient, inclusive, and globally competitive. However, our journey towards growth and prosperity must be underpinned by collaboration and inclusivity. We must forge strong partnerships between the public and private sectors, academia, civil society, and international organizations. And I believe firmly that by working together, we can leverage our collective knowledge, resources, and experiences to implement comprehensive policies and initiatives that drive sustainable economic growth, create jobs, and improve the standard of living for all Ghanaians. This is how, working together, we can rebuild our Ghana. We can build a Ghana that we all want together. I thank you for your kind attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. And now for 15 minutes, the moderator Winston Amoah would engage His Excellency.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jerry. Okay, so once again, let me just say congratulations to you on your election as flag bearer of the NPC. Thank you very much. Great. So you talked about, restoring investments in the financial sector, for instance. And you talked about as far as practical. Please, can you all hear me? Check if it's on. It's on.
licenses that were lost. I mean, I just would want to understand what constitutes the as far as practicable.
Well, all the banks were not in the same circumstances when they were shut down. And I'm aware that there are some criminal prosecutions with misuse of funds and so on and so forth. And that's why I don't want to treat it uniformly. And I said, as far as practicable, those that were unjustly withdrawn, can be restored.
And once you talk about those that were unjustly withdrawn, I get the impression you have a fair idea those that can be restored?
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you an example. I said one bank was shut down because there was criminal prosecution against its major shareholder. It had nothing to do with the bank. And there might be other such cases. And so we need to look at all of them and see whether the withdrawal was just or it wasn't. And the point even is, if you wanted to apply the current reserve position with this debt exchange, are you going to shut down the existing banks? The existing banks have been weakened by this debt exchange. If you apply that same principle, you apply to the indigenous banks, you probably will withdraw the licenses of some existing banks. But government is willing to assist to build those banks back. And the question I ask was, why could we not have done the same with indigenous investments in our banking sector? Today, most of those banks belong to Ghanaians. And today, the banks that are wholly owned by Ghanaians in the finance are few. Most of the banks are the big multinational foreign banks. And you don't even need banks to be of the same capitalization because they address different segments of the market. You don't want everybody to be a 400 million Ghana cedi bank that makes big credits to big business. You have small traders who rely on banks like Undum's Bank, GN Bank. I've traveled around this country. Every single district you go, every single community you go, you see that small brick and tile GN Bank. And it was accepting deposits of 50 cedis, 100 cedis, and so on and so forth. And that created a network for private credit to the lowest of the low in our countries, in the rural areas. And so we should have thought through this properly. And that's why I said, why turn a 4 billion problem into a 25 billion problem? We could have used far less money to turn those banks around. Government could have done like has been done in other places. You give the support that the bank needs to turn around, take a part of it, and as the bank builds back, it takes back its equity, paying the support that you give. It's been done in many countries. Why couldn't we do the same here?
Okay, so I mean, in moving away from this one, so for that one that you made reference to, for instance, we can reasonably infer it's one of those that you look at and one of those that would meet your as far as practicable condition.
Well, we've not done an analysis of them yet, but okay. I'm saying that as far as practicable, if the withdrawal of the licenses is deemed to be unjust, we would look at restoring it.
Great. You also talked about creating a conducive environment for business. It's one of the things we talk about most of the time. And what I want to find out from you is what for you constitutes a conducive environment for business, and giving the chance, how you would want us to create that conducive environment.
We are in competition in our sub-region for investment, both domestic and foreign. And so we must create the environment that allows businesses to thrive and grow. And one of the first basic things will be to have a stable economy. This yo-yo economy that we have, boom and bust, is not good for business. And so the last time we went into an IMF program, I said this must be the last time we go. We must manage our economy prudently so that it's predictable. It creates an environment where businesses are not surprised by new government policy in terms of taxes and so on and so forth, by deterioration in the value of the currency and all that. Unfortunately, we grew 8-point-something%. We had done all the heavy lifting in 2015 and 2016. Of course, we did a 3-year program because we wanted to send a signal that our economic rehabilitation recovery program could transcend political regimes. And that's why we agreed for the 3rd year. That came in 2017. And so it was this government that came and completed the 3rd year. And so there was still some discipline in the 3rd year because we were still in an IMF program. As soon as the program ended, Kenke Party, and then we started. and started mismanaging our own affairs. Of course, Nkrumah said we should be able to mismanage our own affairs. And we started mismanaging our affairs, and today we're where we are. The red flag was raised about excessive borrowing, and nobody will listen. They said, oh, well, we're getting that money because we are credit worthy and the international market trusts us. Today, that same international market has shut you out. And so that's why I'm trying to give some positive solutions. For instance, I made the remark just now that we should review the Public Financial Management Act to include capping the rates of debt accumulation. And so we can say that, look, we cannot do more than 65% debt to GDP.
Okay.
And so if a government is, surpassing the 65% debt to GDP, it has to hold the brakes. We must reduce non-concessional lending. And we did it in 2015. In agreement with the IMF, we agreed that we will not borrow more than $500 million non-concessional finance. Every other finance will be grants and concessional financing. And with that, we were able to manage our debts. We left end of 2016 with a debt to GDP ratio of 56%. Today, we are in excess of 100%. And so, legislation to cap how much government accumulates in debt will become necessary, so that tomorrow another government doesn't come when we have achieved stability and goes on a borrowing spree and creates the same kind of problem that we have. So, a conducive environment for the private sector is to have stability and predictability in the economic management. That the CD is going to remain relatively stable. Even if it deteriorates, it will deteriorate at a gradual rate every year, instead of bump from 6 to 13 CDs to $1. And I mean, if inflation goes up from 15 or 16% to almost 54%, these are the things that affect businesses and either make investors fold up and go away, or some of them, move out to our neighboring countries.
Great. So you talk about, creating jobs. I mean, one of the things that I'm sure a lot of, businesses will be excited about. But you also talk about a little bit of digression. That's the IMF and everything you've talked about. Well, that's become our story recently. Lots of the conditionalities that you said, well, we got to realize after the approval, actually talks about government limiting wage increase and employment for it. Of these jobs that you're talking about, that if you are giving the chance in 2025 you're going to create, how do you intend to go about it?
Yeah, so like I was saying, we should, before we went into an IMF program, have put our house in order. And that's what we did successfully in 2015. You remember we had the Century Forum?
Yes.
We did it to come out with a homegrown fiscal consolidation policy. We invited industry, we invited academia, civil society, political parties, everybody. It's only the MPP that refused to come. And they said any of their members who come, they were going to sanction him. So Osafo had agreed to come. At the last minute, he pulled out because his party said they'll sanction him. The only brave MPP person who came was Kwame Pianim. And I respect him up till this day. But we had a wonderful conversation. PV Obeng of blessed memory and a small team were made to synthesize the whole Century Forum discussion. And so they came with the Century Report. And the Century Report became our homegrown fiscal consolidation policy. So at the time I took the decision, in consultation with our economic management team, to go to the IMF, we had our document ready. We knew what we wanted to do ourselves. Indeed, we had started to implement it in the budget of that year. Just that, for policy credibility, the international community didn't believe that we could maintain that discipline in terms of, implementing the homegrown fiscal consolidation policy. So the EU and everybody was still withholding their grants and all that, even though we're factoring it in the budget. And that is what was creating a bigger deficit, because you factor it in the budget and they don't release the money. And so it creates a deficit in the budget. Then the next year you factor it in again, they don't release the money. So we said, okay, I think they just want IMF as a headmaster to come and stand over us and mark our script and all that. So we said, okay, we'll go to the IMF. And so we did. And when we went to the IMF, we went with our program. The country had seen it, we had published it, we had announced it in the budget, and we had a lot of the things that the IMF agreed we had put in there ourselves. For instance, in the public sector, we said that we're going to import a net freeze on recruitment. What a net freeze means, and indeed our political opponents hit us with a gudgel on the head because of that, was that if 30,000 people were retiring from the public services this year, we will employ 30,000 people to replace them. The only sectors that were exempt were education and health, where we're going to employ based on the needs and capacities in the sector. But every other public sector was going to be a net freeze. Now I've seen the parts of the agreement. It says 0.5% increase in the public sector. So there's going to be a restriction in how much government can employ in the public sector. And so the unbridled recruitment of people day in and day out is going to be constrained for the next 3 years. And that is what brings the private sector in.
Okay.
Because if there's going to be employment and recruitment, it's the private sector that must absorb them. But I mean, if you look at the difficulty the private sector is going through itself, in terms of the new taxes we've imposed, high utility bills, it's also going to constrict their ability to be able to absorb the excess, labor that is in the market. And so that is what we need to put our minds to. And that is the conversation I'm asking that government should have. And government should have had before going into the IMF.
Any special policies you propose around this time to enable the private sector to absorb these persons?
Well, there's a time we should have been given tax breaks to stimulate private sector. But we're rather increasing the burden of taxes on the private sector. And that's what I was asking. What happened to the famous taxation to production mantra that was touted? That never happened. Today they're paying more taxes than they've ever paid in the history. But I do think that if the economy stabilizes too, it will improve the business environment. It will bring back some of the investors who have left, some of those who have left to neighboring countries. We should be able to attract them. We should go out of our way on investment drives to bring some of the labor-intensive, light manufacturing jobs to Ghana. As I think it was the IFC man said, in Asia and other places, population is becoming an issue. Labor issues are going to come because they are having fewer children. And the part is they are growing their economies to the higher end of production. And so there's a certain vacuum there for producing leather goods, for producing clothing and things that Bangladesh and Vietnam and all were very interested in. Even in the agribusiness space, like you said, there's a limit. They've reached the limit of growing rice because the paddies are finite. And so where is the next place for growing rice to feed the rest of Africa? Africa still has more than 50% of the world's arable lands. So areas that we can begin to look to. Malaysia came and took the palm fruit from here. Today we import palm oil and vegetable cooking oil from Malaysia. Meanwhile, we have huge lands. Because of our land tenure system, it is not possible to acquire them to get investors to come and grow oil palm so that we can feed our own industry. Here we're importing hundreds of thousands of tons of palm oil to feed Wilma and our vegetable oil processing companies here. How can we utilize those lands and interest these captains of industry to look at agribusiness and agricultural production to what incentives can we give? And that's why I say a dialogue and a conversation is important. We want to talk to Wilma, we want to talk to Olam, we want to talk to all these who have the technology and capacity to do it. They've done it in other countries. What incentives do they want government to give them? In order that they help us with cotton production in the north, that will bring extra incomes to poor northern families. How do they help us to grow the palm oil that they use for their industry? These are all things that we can have a conversation about.
Finally, you haven't talked about those taxes. Is it my understanding that if given the chance, you would reverse these taxes or you actually scrap them? Or you would reduce them? What would you do?
Well, you're not going to be able to do it as long as you remain in the IMF program. Once they sign on the dotted line and commit to those taxes, a new government that comes in 2025 is not going to be able to renege on those taxes. But it's a 3-year program from what I understand. So 1.5 years of that program is going to be part of the term of this government. And then it means that in the term of a new government, 1.5 years of that term would also be under the IMF. And so whatever they've appended their signature to is going to affect a new government that comes in. It's only after 1.5 years, when Ghana has graduated out, that you can look at those taxes again and say, look, we can give some relief to the industry in this regard because our revenues are doing better, production is picking up, the economy is more stable. And so these are things that you can review, after the program has ended. But for now, we've locked ourselves in.
Well, our time is also up. Thank you very, very much, Mr. John Dramani Mahama.
Speaking so eloquently on economic sovereignty, sustainable corporate governance, digital industrial transformation, new paths for growth and prosperity. Mr. President, in time-held tradition, we shall be inviting you back shortly to help us present awards to celebrate our various CEOs, innovators, and entrepreneurs. We now move to the CEO Awards. It's my pleasure to invite up here our convener, the CEO of the CEOs Summit, ladies and gentlemen, Ernest de Graaf Tijri, together with a member of the board, Mr. Moses Baden. A round of applause as they come. The CEO Excellence Award recognizes, celebrates, and profiles the achievements of businesses and leaders. The award celebrates business success, innovation, leadership, and contribution to the economy. That was a little commercial break. Pleasure's mine to invite back on stage our guest of honor, the fourth president of our Fourth Republic, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. Please. Somebody sent me a message, Mr. President, that when acknowledging the artist, you did not mention Shatawale. A whole Mahama paper. You will see how the campaign will go. We begin with CEO of the Year, Outstanding Public Leadership Award. The first one goes to the Bulk Oil Storage and Transport Company Limited, the CEO, Mr. Edwin Provincial. A truly profitable state-owned enterprise. You have shown great leadership and transformation. We celebrate you for your outstanding public leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Edward Provincial. The next, the CEO of Environmental Protection Agency, Mr. Henry Kwabna Kokofu. Congratulations, sir. The next, Ghana Water Limited engineer, Dr. Clifford Brymer. The DVLA and the CEO, Kwesi Ajiman Buzia. It will be received on his behalf. The Ghana Investment Promotion Center and the CEO, Mr. Yofi Grant. His deputy will receive it on his behalf. Mr. Yawamwati Friye. And of course, while standing public leadership, the Managing Director, Electricity Company of Ghana, Samuel Dubik Mahama. He's still collecting our debt. Food and Drugs Authority, the CEO, Madame Delise Mimi Dako. The National Petroleum Authority and the CEO, Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid. The Ghana Revenue Authority, the Reverend Amishadai Owusu Amoa. I believe the Chief Revenue Officer will receive on his behalf. The Inspector General of Police, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. George Akufu Dampare. From the National Insurance Commission, the CEO, Dr. Justice Yao Ofori. From the GNPC, the CEO, Stopoku Awine Dankwa. Congratulations. SIGA, the Director General, Mr. Edward Boateng, Ambassador Edward Boateng. Okay. And the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Kwamina Yedu Addison. Together, let's hear it up for all of them. We move straight to Leadership Excellence Awards, and the first is the CEO, Key Constructing Limited, Hussein Fakri. He's followed by the CEO of Silver Star Auto Limited, Mr. Asad Nazir. Joining in the string of awards, the CEO, Société Générale Ghana, Mr. Hakim Uzani. Congratulations, Mr. Nazir.
Well done.
And now Mr. Hakim Huzani. Following Mr. Huzani, the Managing Director of Fidelity Bank Ghana Limited, Mr. Julian Opuni. And a representative will receive it on his behalf. Let's receive the Managing Director of Vivo Ghana, Skeda Maiga. And a representative will also receive on his behalf. He's followed by the CEO of Capfarm, Mr. Charles Enchi Boahin. Congratulations, Capfarm and the CEO. African Diamond Cable Company Limited and the CEO, Mr. Mustafa Kore Kant. The Melcom Group and the Group Executive Director, Sonia Sadwani. Polytank and the CEO, Ashok Mohinani. Bayport Savings and Loans, make welcome the CEO, Akwesi Abwaji. Bayport. The CEO of Main One, Mr. Emmanuel Kwating, joins the list for Leadership Excellence Award. Samir Engineering and Trading Company Limited, the CEO, Nazim Karum. GT Bank Ghana Limited, Mr. Thomas Atta John. DDP Outdoor Limited, make welcome the CEO, Norbert Rufu. Ecobank Ghana Limited, ladies and gentlemen, the CEO, Mr. Daniel Saki. Congratulations, Mr. Dan Saki. Lene Services Limited, the CEO, Dr. Ellen Hagan. Newmont Corporation Ghana, the Senior Vice President, Madame Adiki Aitevi. Lene, sure. And this is for Lene, Dr. Mrs. Ellen Hagan. Newmont Corporation, a representative. Okay. Allied Oil Ghana, Mr. Elliot Okujato, CEO. A representative. JL Properties, Mr. James Orleans Lindsay. JL Properties. Ghana Rubber Estate Limited, the CEO, Lionel Robert Barry. The McDan Group and the Group Chairman, Dr. Daniel Macaulay. Vodafone Ghana, the CEO, Madame Patricia Obunai. And this is how we celebrate leadership excellence. The last but one category is the CEO of the Year. Let's begin with the President and Regional Head, Olam Ghana Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, Amit Agrawal. The Managing Director, Arasa Investments, Frank Carlson. The Country Director, Ecom Ghana, Muhammadu Muzamil. The CEO, Zonda Tech Ghana Limited, Yang. The CEO of Absa Bank, Madame Abna Osei Poku. The CEO of Casa Precon, Mr. Richard Ajay. The CEO of Consa, Stefano Ramella. The CEO of DSTV, Mr. Alex Otri. For CEO of the Year, ladies and gentlemen, bulk oil distribution, make welcome again Mr. Edwin Provençal. CEO of the Year, Chemicals, J.A. Baini Company Limited, Mr. John Apia Baini. CEO of the Year, Cocoa Sector, the Managing Director, Federated Commodities, Hajia Maria Adamu Zibo. Congratulations, Jay Baini. And now a resounding round of applause for Hajia. Consulting, and the country manager, Deloitte Ghana, takes this one, Mr. Daniel K. Ousu. Cosmetics and Toiletries, the CEO, Gando Cosmetics, Tanal Gando. Downstream Petrochemical, Goyle, and the CEO, the Honorable Kwame Osei Prempe. For Energy, the Volta River Authority, Engineer Emmanuel Enchidankwa. And this is for Downstream Petroleum Goyle. Congratulations, Goyle. And now let's go to VRA for Energy. For FinTech, CEO of the Year, Zipe Ghana Limited, Andrew Techiapia. CEO of the Year, Food Retail, GB Foods Ghana, and the CEO, David Kofi Aflu. Food Confectionery, CEO of Nestle, Georgios Adaro. And let's go to food processing. Olam Ghana Limited, the President and Regional Head, Mr. Amit Agrawal. With a few more awards to go, and it will be a wrap. CEO of the Year Insurance, General Insurance category, SIC Insurance, the Managing Director, Mr. Stephen Kwame Odro. Healthcare and the CEO of Lister Hospital, Dr. Edem Nyaji. Mr. Stephen Kwame Odro, SIC, General Insurance. Congratulations, SIC. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the CEO of Lister Hospital, Dr. Edem Nyaji. Sounds like he can win an election. The CEO, Nationwide Medical Insurance in the Healthcare Insurance category, Dr. Douglas K. Sarkodie. Herbal Manufacturing and the CEO, COA Research and Manufacturing, Professor Samuel Atsu Duncan. Congratulations, COA. Hospitality Forestry is the CEO of Safari Group, Samuel Afari Date. For life insurance, the CEO Enterprise Life Insurance, Madame Jacqueline Benny. CEO of the Year, Manufacturing Cement, the CEO of Gassem, Stefano Galini. Congratulations, Enterprise Life. Congratulations, Gassem. Manufacturing, Soft Beverage, and the Managing Director, Equatorial Coca-Cola Bottling, Felix Gomes. Manufacturing Alcoholic Beverage, the Managing Director, Guinness Ghana, Elizabeth Helen Weiss. For Media Print, the CEO, Graphics Communications, Statu Afo. For Media Television, the COO of the Multimedia Group, Mr. Ken Ansa. For Media Online, CEO, Media General, Madame Beatrice Ajiman Abe. For Media Radio, City FM, the CEO, Mr. Samuel Atta Mensah. Metal Manufacturing, the CEO, Metalex Group, Kwabna Ijari Dankwa. Mining Engineering, the CEO, Engineers and Planners Limited, Mr. Ibrahim Mahama. You didn't hear that. A round of applause. For paint sector, News Ghana Paint, the CEO, West Africa, Jonathan Costa. For pension trustee, the CEO, Petra Trust, Kofi D. Finn. Pharmaceuticals and the CEO, M&G Pharmaceuticals, Mr. Gopal Vasu, the Godfather. Make welcome for Pipes and Rubber, the CEO, Interplast, Mr. Hisam Fakri. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gopal Vasu, M&G Pharmaceuticals, CEO of the Year, Pharmaceuticals. Mr. Hisam Fakri, Interplast CEO for Pipes and Rubber. For Plastics, the CEO, Qualiplast, Mr. Fares Akil. For Printing, the CEO, JK Pawan Aidasani. CEO of the Year, Private Security Sector, and the CEO, G4S Security Services, Michael Japa. For Real Estate, the CEO, Adum Group, Dr. Bright Adum. CEO, Real Estate Development, the CEO's Aries Properties, Enoch Enchua Mensa. Retail Electronics, Compu Ghana, and the CEO, Mr. Said Masri. CEO of the Year, Retail Multi-Store, and it goes to the CEO of Oka Deco. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Sharara. CEO of the Year, Retail Supermarket, and the Joint MD at the Malcolm Group, Ramesh Sadwani. And immediately, he's followed by Mahesh Melwani for taking CEO of the Year in the Retail Supermarket Malcolm Group. A round of applause for the Malcolm Group. Savings and Loans, the CEO, Easeway Savings and Loans, Raymond Bismarck. CEO of the Year, Shipping, Christophe Monmach. CEO of the Year, Shipping Multinational, and the CEO of Maersk Ghana, Razak Ngula. CEO of the Year, Stationery, Kingdom Books and Services, Kingdom Books and Stationery, I beg your pardon, Peter Jati. CEO of the Year, Technology ICT, IPMC, and the CEO, Amar Deep Hari. For Textiles, CEO of the Year, Vlisco Cluster Ghana, Madam Fatuma Doro. CEO Upstream Petroleum, and ladies and gentlemen, once again, the CEO of GNPC, Mr. Poku Awunie Dankwa. Congratulations. CEO of the Year, Venture Capital Fund, ladies and gentlemen, Oasis Capital, Matthew Bwedi Eje. And the last 9 awards. We go to the Group CEO of the Year, and it goes to the Executive Chairman of the KGL Group, Mr. Alex Dade. For conglomerate business. Ladies and gentlemen, the Group CEO of the Year for conglomerate business, the Executive Chairman of the KGL Group, Mr. Alex Dade. And he does well in the diaspora too. Mr. Dade, do you think you can win the diaspora business? Should you win it? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll give it to him. Please, diaspora business, once again, Mr. Alex Dade, bring the second one. No, bring the two. You hold the two. Ladies and gentlemen, conglomerate business and diaspora business, the Executive Chairman, KCL Group, Mr. Alex Dade. Congratulations. Let's go to Group CEO of the Year for Insurance Business. Ladies and gentlemen, the Group CEO of the Hollard Holdings, Madam Patience Achianu. Group Chairman of the Year, Private Business Sector. The Group Chief Executive of the Jospong Group, Dr. Joseph Siang Echepong. CBS on his behalf. Say congratulations to the Group Executive Chairman of the Jospong Group of Companies, Dr. Joseph Siang Echepong. We now go to the Young CEO of the Year, Private Sector. Ladies and gentlemen, the CEO, Engine Ghana, Brent Nati. Celebrating 25 outstanding years in the delivery of quality fuels and lubricants to Ghana. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brent Nati is the CEO. A round of applause for him. We go to the Board Chair of the Year, and it goes to, for the private sector, It goes to the former board chair of Fidelity Bank, Mr. Edward Efa. It is received on this behalf. Board Chair of the Year, Public Sector. It goes to the Board Chair of the NPA, Mr. Joe Ado Yobo. Now we have overall private sector CEO of the year. Ladies and gentlemen, the private sector, it goes to the CEO of MTN Ghana, Mr. Selom Adadevo. Congratulations. And from being a telecommunications company, they are now a full-fledged communications company. Ladies and gentlemen, MTN Ghana. Congratulations, Mr. Selom Adadevo. And now for overall public sector CEO of the year, public sector. Take these numbers: 45, 18, 23, single 2, and 14. And the winner is, ladies and gentlemen, the CEO or the Director General of the National Lotteries Authority, Mr. Sami Awuku. And under his tenure, the Lotto doctor can be raised. Please put your hand. Let me invite back Selom Adadevo to Samia Uku. Please, a round of applause as they come. And shortly I shall invite all the winners for a group photograph. But for now, let's have and now I shall invite you all down as I invite all the award winners upstage. A round of applause. All the award winners, please come upstage as we have the official party joining us down. Yeah, sure. And so, in 3, 2, 1, we all raise our plaques. Let's go in 3, 2, 1, and hip hip. Hip hip. Hip hip. Thank you, award winners. The last photograph with our guest of honor and the official party will be with all CEOs. All CEOs. So if you're a recipient and you're a CEO, please stay behind. But all other CEOs, please join. All CEOs, board chairs, executive directors. 1, 2. It now falls to you, Your Excellency, to declare the summit officially open.
Oh, wow. Okay, it's my duty and privilege to declare the CEO Summit for 2023 officially opened or closed? Opened. Thank you.
And so now, we make our way out to the exhibition area, and then the ushers will lead us to lunch. Lunch is at the restaurant for all our VIPs, and then the Papillon. For those of you who have received your cheats, you know your respective destination. At exactly 3:30, we shall reconvene here. Announce. We shall reconvene here for the next plenary. Lunch is just for 1 hour. Please be mindful of what's on your cheats and proceed to your lunch area. Bon appetit.